Hey everyone, so today we're going to take a look at a couple of different ways that you can make chord progressions that aren't in C major but still using 8 steps equal temperament. And that's going to be by making use of different modes that contain the same notes as C major. In preparation for this video, I did a lot of thinking about how much information I should include about the modes and how deep of a dive I wanted to take into music theory. And ultimately, I decided that doing that would just take me off on too much of a tangent away from the purpose of this series, which is focused on the subharmonicon. So if you want to know more about the different modes and you're interested in the music theory that goes behind some of these ideas, let me know in the comments section because I'm really happy to do more videos on music theory. But for today, I'm just going to give a really brief overview of what the modes are and try to stick to how I'm going to use them with the subharmonicon. I'm going to guide you through 3 different patches with 3 of the different modes. All of the patches that I'm going to use today, I've made diagrams for, and I'm going to include in a Subharmonicon patch book that I'm uploading to my Patreon page as of the publishing of this video. All of the patches in all of my books have video links for every patch. And on the first of every month, I update all of my documents with more information and more patches and other stuff. So there'll be more Subharmonicon patches in that patch book on the first of the month. But if you are interested in the diagrams, head on over to Patreon. The link's below in the description. Just like anything creative, there's no kind of right way to do things, and following a formulaic process isn't always the best. This is just kind of one idea, one approach. Let's jump into it. Here are some patches on using the modes with the subharmonicon. So just to give a quick overview of the modes, here's a graphic that shows all of the notes for each of the modes that you can get from the same notes as the key of C major. Since these are the notes that are available to us using the 8 steps equal temperament, these are what we're going to use to build up our progressions. Each of them have a very different mood to them, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them in this video. We're going to go through Dorian, Mixolydian, and Lydian. So that means when we build a patch in Dorian, we're going to use the key of D Dorian. So let's start there. The Dorian mode is a minor mode because the root note, D, is a minor chord, D minor. To me, I associate Dorian more with like a rock-oriented minor. It's not necessarily dark and depressing like a natural minor, but it has more of a brooding tone to it. The song Breathe by Pink Floyd is a great example of the Dorian mode, and there's tons of it, especially in classic rock. So this is the patch that we're going to be building up today. All of these patches and more will be available on my Patreon page. Each patch will have a link to a video similar to what you're seeing here today. Let me explain how I notate this, and let's build up this patch from scratch. So one of the things I like to do instead of doing it in the way that Moog has it in the manuals is actually write the notes and the subdivisions rather than just showing you where the knob will be. So for instance, VCO1, I could have just put it somewhere down here, but I wanted to really show you that this is programmed to D. So I would recommend possibly even using a tuner to get to D, but at the very least you could dial it all the way down to C, turn up VCO1, and let me turn this up, and let's tune it to something like a pulse. So that's middle C, and all we're hearing is VCO1. Now we're at D. Now if you notice on the patch, you can get D in multiple places, and I put a dot down here to show that this was the D that I was going for. VCO2 is going to be set to A. So we're C, D, E, oops. C, D, E, F, G, A. And notice I set a dot up here to show that we were going to this higher A rather than a lower one. And you can, of course, change this to your taste. For our subharmonics, I have numbers indicated. And that's because I wanted to show the subdivision, again, rather than just the marking, because it's really important to the overall sound. So the first thing you're going to want to make sure is that your assign button is off, because if it's on, it's going to change, and that could mess with you. So I have this one set to subdivision 4. Now when it's turned all the way clockwise, it's already at 1. So we're going to hold the trigger button and go down to 4. And my sub-level 1 is the only one that's up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that puts us at a D as well, a very low D, and that's going to hold down our bass. Up here, I've set it level 2. 1, 2. So now if we hear all three of these together, it gives us that massive D in the bass. Let's turn these down and go on to VCO2. We already have a high A. We're going to go subdivision 3 and subdivision 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. And if we hear them all together, there's a little bit more harmony going on here. And that's because this, as subdivision 3, when this is A, is going to be a D. So now we have a perfect fifth. So it's a lot of Ds and a couple of A's, giving us a perfect fifth of D. As the sequencer changes, these are all going to change, but that gives us a nice starting place. So let's head over to our sequencer. So the first two are 0, and that means that this is going to have no impact on the sound. So if we turn on sequencer 1, actually I'm going to turn down sub-level or VCO2 for right now. You should be able to just do it by ear by turning this on and off, like if it was set to something different. Oh, you know it's wrong. So if it's the same, it's at 0. So let's put in 0 for the, and I chose the 0 because it's having 0 impact on the sound. Let's move forward. Great. Okay, so this one's set to 0, but on the patch it's 2. So I'm going to hold this down. 0, 1, 2. Next one. 0, 1, 2, 3. And that's our chord progression. So if you notice on this patch, I haven't put anything for sequencer 2. And there's a reason for that. Because nothing's going to be assigned to sequencer 2. So it doesn't really matter where these are put. And you could actually use it for a different modulation source. Part of that is because I'm patching sequencer 1 into VCO 2. So now sequencer 1 is controlling both of those. But sequencer 2 does play an important role because it's attached to the rhythm. And so even though it's not changing any pitches, as it's going to be triggering the envelopes. Let's talk about our rhythm knobs really quickly. These are a bit harder to dial in. I would start with just one of them. This is at 4. So again, just like the sub oscillators, if it's set all the way counterclockwise, that's a subdivision of 1. I would go to a lower tempo. And that's our clock. That's 2, 3, 4. And now if you really wanted to test it, which I would recommend because sometimes it's really hard, I would put in a steady beat, possibly from the DFAM. So this is coming from the DFAM, that's just hitting a kick on each beat. And so now if I hit play and reset, actually let me slow this way down. So that now it's going through for each beat of the DFAM. It's going every other beat, so now we're at 2. That's at 3 because it's going every third beat. Oh, I missed one. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Perfect. Now it's a little bit easier since one of our rhythms is correct. This one is going to be half that amount. So you can set it to go. Okay, that's too fast. And there you go, our rhythms are dialed in. And so as I was explaining before, I want it going off at this rate. I want the envelopes triggering at this rate, but the sequence to only progress at this rate. So that way it'll hit each of these notes twice. All right, so now that we've got all of that set up, we can just dial in the rest of our settings. And we're good to go. Oh, we got to remember to put our waves in the correct spot. Turn up our VCO2. And of course, a lot of this stuff is just taste. If you did want to use that sequencer with sub 2, right here, there's a little bit of a sour note on this third step. And if you don't like that tension, you can use this to kind of bounce around. It adds a cool effect. Listen to this. And I mean, you could really program it to be anywhere you want. Because even if it does hit that sour note, it will resolve to a chord with less tension to it. And actually, I guess we don't even need to patch it. We could just do this. Jeez, I think I actually like that better than the original patch. Super cool. Maybe I'll change it. See, these things are organic. I'm sure as you play around with it, you're going to come up with something even better. But just to really bring out that D Dorian vibe and give you a sense of what it sounds like, let's bring in the rest of the sound studio. I've got a pretty bare bones sequence into the mother in D Dorian, mostly just focused around a D minor chord. And then I've got into the DFAM, just a very, very simple percussive beat. And there you go. And that is my patch in D Dorian called Midnight Ride. Just to give the full effect, let's hear it one more time with some subtle effects. Alright, so the next patch we're going to dial in is called G-Funk. Here is the patch diagram. Once again, these are going to be up on my Patreon page, and I'm going to be adding more at the end of the month. So this actually doesn't use the patch bay at all. I call it G-Funk. We're using the Mixolydian mode, G Mixolydian. The Mixolydian mode is very close to the major scale. The only difference is rather than a major seventh, you have a dominant seventh. It is a major mode, so it's going to have a bright and happy feel to it, but it's not quite as like bubblegummy happy as a major scale. It's used a lot in like rock guitar solos and things like that. But it definitely has a kind of upbeat vibe to it. So we're going to put it together the same way as last time. Our two VCOs are tuned to G, so I'd recommend using a tuner, but of course you can always just turn down everything, turn off your sequencer assigned buttons and do it individually like this. So that's going to be C, D, E, F, G. And then this one's going to be similar, but an octave higher. Let's dial in our sub oscillators. I'm going to turn down everything. This one's going to be set to the second subdivision. 1, 2. The next one's going to be set to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's hear them all together. We're going to go over to sub oscillators for our second VCO. First one set to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the next one is set to 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's hear them all together. Very cool. That's what they sound like all together. So let's set our sequencer. We're going to go to the first one, and it should not have any change in the sound. So it's 0. The next one is -1. So that's 0, -1. Zero. Great. And now all the way up to 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And actually, I'm going to turn this down so we can hear it. And down below, sub oscillator 2. Let's turn this down so we can just hear that one. So that's 0. The next one. 0, 1. That's 1 as well. And then down to 0. Great. For our rhythms, this is set to 8. So that means when we play, for instance, I'm going to hook up the DFAM for a reference point. You could use a metronome or anything, or just count it down from setting it clockwise, and then every time it changes beats going up. I like to do it with the DFAM. So it's going to go for every time through the DFAM, it's going to go one step. So just to hear what it sounds like on the DFAM without this playing. Okay, that's the beat I've got set up. So now when I hit this, if it's set to 8, it's going to progress one time through every time the DFAM goes through. Actually, let me turn this all the way down. Turn this off. So now we know that it's set to 8. This should be set to 3 and 2. So let's do it individually. Turn up. Turn these down. So now this should go through every third beat. And turn the tempo down so it's easier to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Since it's every third beat, it would go in 1 and 4. Let's try it again just to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's good. And then we want this on 2. So let's just check it. Perfect. Now, what I got going on here is we have the cutoff way low and the envelope amount way high. So that's going to create a lot of movement with the cutoff. I think that makes a super tight, funky sound. The decay is also pretty fast and the attack is really fast. I play around a little bit with the attack, but I don't let it go too much on this one. Fast attack on the VCA and a moderate decay on the VCA, because once that cutoff clicks up because of the envelope and then comes back down, I still want it to ring out just a little bit. When I do this with cutoffs and envelopes, by turning the cutoff way down and the envelope way up, sometimes I really like to have the resonance up. But with Moog filters, that takes away a little bit of our bass, and that's kind of what the role that this patch is playing. So we're going to start with it down. All right, let's hear what it sounds like with a basic sequence from the Mother and the DFAM. I've got a sequence dialed in G Mixolydian. It's pretty much just a G dominant 7 arpeggio. Make sure to turn up your VCO levels. And as I said before, a lot of this stuff is to taste. I like to turn down the VCO2 level. It doesn't really matter because of the cutoffs down, but just to get some of those higher frequencies out of there. But here we go. So I just noticed I had something off with that this oscillator 2 is assigned to sequencer 2, and in fact I had intended to just have that changing the sub frequencies, and that's why I kept it at 0 and 1, which was very simple because that just changes it just barely with these. So let's hear what it sounds like there. It just kind of is like a nice touch. I was thinking something was off. That's what it was. Let's hear it now. Oh, that's so much better. So you hear it with the other one. It's just kind of boring going through that, but Alright, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this patch and that you get some use out of it. Let's move on to another one. This next patch is called Mystic Woods. It's in the key of F Lydian. Lydian is one of my favorite modes to play in. It's awesome for ambient music. It's a major mode, so it's kind of happy, but it has a pensive, mystical, magical quality to it. John Williams uses the Lydian mode frequently in his scores when he wants to evoke something magical or mysterious. I have all of the patch points dialed in just like the patch book. I'm not going to go through each one because I've showed you how to do that in the last two patches. But this should be set up exactly like the diagram. And one of the keys to this patch, it's supposed to have a mystical quality, so there's a bit of like flutteriness and randomness. So modulating the two rhythm sources is a great way to accomplish that. And I would suggest too, for the purpose of this patch, I wanted to keep everything with the Subharmonicon because I don't know what everybody's gear is. But if you have other modules or the rest of the sound studio, I'd highly recommend patching to different rhythms and adding in more rhythms just to get some nice, beautiful randomness. If you notice, the sequence is turned off for the VCO1, so that's going to kind of hold down the fort anyway, so it's great to have all these things kind of fluttering about. For this patch, I wanted to show off how using an envelope can speed up and slow down rhythms by when you adjust these knobs. So I've got a basic sequence programmed in. It's very focused around an F major chord. Pretty bare bones percussive patch going on in the DFAM. Let's hear what it sounds like. And this one sounds great when you have it be very sparse and plucky like this, and you add in some reverb. So let me stop that. Let's put some effects on this because it is magical, it's mystical, so let's just throw down some reverb on it. Let's even slow it down. Playing around with settings. Alright, we'll turn off the reverb for a minute because I want to show you how this patch works. So the envelope is creating control voltage that's going to affect rhythm 2. So without it, this is the rhythm. Make it really plucky so it's obvious. It matches rhythm 1. But when we plug it in, notice how fast it's going? But we can slow it down. So as you play around with this, when it gets nice and plucky, it's going to be slower, and as it opens up, it's faster. And because you're also doing that too as the other sequence is going, it's not going to line up anymore. And that's what I was going for on this. If you didn't want it to have that dramatic of an effect, you could slow it down a little bit too. Let's play around with that while the sequence is going and with our effects on. This is a nice one for effects. Here we go. I like it a little bit faster. Adding in resonance gives it a little bit of a vocal wah quality to it. So there you have it. There's my patch Mystic Woods. If you like these patches, I'm going to be uploading more on my Patreon page with video links to descriptions and sound samples like this one. Let me know what you think of these in the comments section. I really appreciate all the positive comments that have been coming in, as well as the suggestions for new videos or even different patch points. It's been really helpful to me as a musician, but also as a content creator. So keep them coming. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.